president of the International Committee of the Red Cross has said that Gaza has become worse than hell on earth. Mirjana Spoljaric was speaking to the BBC just earlier today, and the comments come as at least 12 Palestinians have been killed. Several others have been injured in an Israeli airstrike targeting a school in Khan Yunis. That's according to medics and eyewitnesses. Eyewitnesses have been reporting that an Israeli drone struck two tents which were housing dozens of displaced people, including women and children. Well, Gaza's Hamas-run civil defense agency said that rescue workers had recovered the bodies of two children. Well, we're continuously monitoring the live scene in Khan Yunis, and this is the latest attack, the latest Israeli attack, which comes as aid distribution centres across Gaza are closed today as calls grow for independent investigations into the killings of dozens of people in incidents near the sites. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is a controversial aid network backed by the US and Israel, which began operating last week, says it was closing its sites for update organisation and efficiency improvement works. Well, our Middle East correspondent Barbara Pletasha is following developments from Jerusalem. I asked her just what we knew about the strike on the school in Gaza.
This is a school in Khan Yunis, and the Israelis issued evacuation orders for parts of Khan Yunis quite recently. They told civilians that they would be stepping up their offensive there against Hamas, and so we understand that hundreds of people arrived at this particular school since then because of those evacuation orders. So they put up tents in the grounds of the school, and what we're understanding from eyewitnesses as well as the Civil Defense Agency is that Israeli drones struck, hitting two of the tents that belonged to one family, and we have those casualty figures right now of 12 dead and a number of people injured. You know, of course, Kasia, that the schools across Gaza mostly are not operating now and are very, very widely used as places for displaced people to take refuge, and also that the Israelis quite often hit the schools, saying that they are being used as command and control centers by Hamas. We have not had any response yet from the Israelis about this incident, but usually the result of any strikes are that many civilians are the ones who suffer.
Barbara Pletasha in Jerusalem. Well, also earlier I spoke to Awa Damon. She's the founder of the International Network for Aid, Relief and Assistance, INARA. It's one of the groups on the ground in Gaza. I began by asking her what she made of the International Committee of the Red Cross's comments that Gaza has become worse than hell on earth.
I've been to Gaza myself 4 times since October 7th, and then Israel actually denied me entry earlier this year with no reason given. And when you speak to INARA's team members, when you speak to anyone actually on the ground in Gaza, you know, for them, it's eclipsed hell on earth. This is an entirely new realm of such complete and utter, deliberately caused human suffering that it's extraordinarily difficult, even for those who are living through it, to actually wrap their minds around it and understand how it is that even they themselves are getting through every single day. Add to the sheer struggle of survival, everybody is hungry, tired, thirsty, super low energy levels. And so you have to imagine, you know, and frankly, it's quite, you know, surprising to a certain degree to hear, you know, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation say that they were surprised at the number of people who showed up to their distribution sites, because what were they expecting? Were they really expecting, and this is exactly why they came under such heavy criticism, that they would be able to feed and provide for more than 2.2 million starving people with just 4 hubs, people who would have to walk hours through extraordinarily dangerous militarized zones? Look, there's already an infrastructure in place in Gaza, run by the United Nations and other organizations, with over 400 distribution points. The capacity is there. All humanitarian organizations need is to have their trucks be let in and to be permitted to actually do their job.
But we continuously hear Israel refusing to let UNRWA do that, and we appreciate what you're saying, that it's got the abilities, and we speak to UNRWA regularly. They say they've got the facilities, they've got the infrastructure, they've got the local knowledge to do it. But when you've got Israel insisting that UNRWA has sympathies or even people who are members of Hamas working for them, something that UNRWA strongly disputes, how do you get around that then?
Well, I quite frankly would argue back that, you know what, fine. You want to use that allegation towards UNRWA and stop them from doing their job? What about the World Food Program? What about the World Central Kitchen that has the capacity to feed hundreds of thousands of people a day, and yet it too is not being permitted to bring in its supplies? Look, a lot of what Israel tries to argue to justify its actions, quite simply, when you know what's really happening on the ground, just doesn't make sense. Even if we take, these horrific, mass casualty incidents that have happened as people were en route to these distribution points. Israel is the one that dictates the route that people have to take. And Israel knows that that route takes people through a danger zone. And actually, I have an eyewitness account from a young man who was there over the weekend during one of these mass casualty events. And he's describing how the crowd of people moved forward after they got the okay to move forward. Then the gunshots ring out. Then he and his friends end up running towards the beach thinking that they might be safer. But while they're running down the beach, a gunship begins firing at them. And he specifically describes how 4 people died in front of him and how he saw a little 5-year-old girl being shot in the stomach. And quite frankly, having been on the ground myself, being constantly in touch with people there, knowing the reality of what's happening, it's very frustrating that for some reason, so many world superpowers, so many individuals are refusing to believe what it is that the Palestinians in Gaza who are living through this are telling them. And it really begs the question of, if we had actually listened to them, if we had actually believed them when they said we're being killed, we're being starved, this is a war that is being carried out on us and not Hamas, would we actually be where we are today?